Number 1. I was introduced to the Slender Man a few months ago when some guy wanted to pull a prank on my friend. He asked for my help, but I didn't follow along and just left. He wanted to scare my friend with a Slenderman costume. I looked up the Slenderman and read through the mythos, ignoring the "do not look deeply into the legend or he will find you" warnings, and went on to marble hornets. I loved the story and everything, but it was a little uneasy feeling at night. I thought I might be psyching myself out, but then weird things started happening. My parents say I will be awake and talking to them for hours before I actually wake up. They'll say I do things I didn't do, like make tea, and see it is half empty when I wonder if they told the truth. My parents are honest people, and I believe them, but it is impossible. A couple of nights ago, I felt like I was being watched. Uncharacteristically, I looked out the window and saw a flash of white and black. That night, I had a dream. I drew on a sheet of paper what I saw in the dream. I remember drawing this, and I'm glad I did, because I've forgotten the dream. My reaction time is slower, along with my memory being shorter each day. I drew an operator symbol and taped it over my door, and since then I've had no experiences. The only thing is that I, being 16, have never in my life had a stuffy nose. Yet recently it is always clogged, followed by major headaches that Tylenol can't treat. I don't know what's been up, but I still feel like I'm being watched. Sometimes my phone shuts off and my TV goes to static, followed by a headache. Number 2. This happened at about the time I was 4 or 5. Like any other little kid, I would get scared of most things, but this one time scared me more than any other. After a normal day in the life of a kindergartner, I went to sleep at about 10 o'clock or so. Half the time I either forgot my dreams or just don't dream at all. Tonight was not one of those nights. After drifting off to sleep, I began a very weird dream. I see myself walking down a long, narrow, dark corridor, light only coming from a door at the very end. I slowly walk through the hallway to the room, which is very bright, the entire room seeming to be covered in white. I walk into the room, but there's nothing to explore in there. As I'm about done looking at this room, I turn around back to the door to get in the corridor again, where this time there's a man standing there. I just see his long black business suit, and I start looking up closely. Okay, red tie, I think to myself. I eventually look at his face. There is no face. I am looking at a white orb with a neck wearing a business suit, standing almost 8 feet tall. Like any normal kid my age, I scream. The scream rips me away from the dream into real life. I'm sweating and my heart is racing. I look towards the clock to read 12:57 a.m. My dad opens the door to my room, and when he comes in, he asks what's wrong. Apparently, all my dad's recalling, he claims I said, "Tall stick man." Number 3. I had a nightmare that a black silhouette was slowly pulling my covers off. First my comforter, then the knit blanket, then my sheets to my waist before I freaked out and sat up. Nothing was there, but the aforementioned blankets were pulled completely off and were on the floor at the foot of my bed. My sheet was at my waist. I woke up and rationalised that I had kicked them off in my sleep. That is, until I felt a cold breeze. It was 17 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and noticed my window, which was an old window from 1946, with the pathetic little latches, was wide open. My curtain pulled aside. I heard the brushes in my yard rustling and the dog barking like crazy. I got up, grabbed the gun, turned on the light and bolted from my room saying, "Nope, nope, 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 nope," in my head over and over, and let the dog in to sleep with me. Number 4. I am currently an 18-year-old female and I live in Oklahoma City. This event occurred when I was 15, but it happened in the same location. My friend, I was with her at the time of the incident, lives in a fairly decent neighbourhood that was 15 minutes walking distance from a 7-Eleven. Her parents allowed us to make late night trips there for snacks on occasion. As you're walking down the street to the 7-Eleven, there is a park to the left. All it has in it is weird statue things, but I was familiar with them. Mind you, it was about 12:30 or 1. As we were walking by this park to the left, we could see this extremely tall figure. I recall it being as tall as the branches of surrounding trees. He seemed to be dressed in all black and extremely pale. I am an extremely logical person, so I wanted to validate. It was just some strange, tall person. I shouted repeatedly at this thing. After no response, we ran off as fast as possible and referred to this thing as Voldemort because of its paleness. It wasn't until 2 years later that my friend informed me of Slenderman, and I realised that whatever I saw that night looked exactly like him. Number 5. Something very strange happened to me last night. Something I still can't quite understand. It was about 9:55 last night when it happened. It was about time for me to be getting to bed, so I took my 10-year-old mutt, Daisy, out for her last bathroom break for the night. I've been having problems with mild slender sickness, namely nausea, severe headaches and extreme paranoia. So I knew he had been following me again. As I stood in the strip between the fence of the next door neighbour's fence and my own front door, I watched Daisy trot off into the dark. Then the wait set in. I knew he was watching me, but I couldn't tell from where. I had my back to the street for a few seconds as I tried to pinpoint my observer's position. Then I remembered where I saw him last. He had stood beneath the street lamp across from my home, which was directly behind me. I turned around to see him there, watching me. I froze, just as I had last time, and bit the inside of my cheek from screaming. My mother was still inside and awake, so I couldn't call out and draw her from safety. I felt my eyes go wide as panic shot through me like a lightning bolt. My muscles coiled and my heart began racing. I stood like this for maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I blinked. What happened next was a little too much for me to comprehend. In the split second it took me to open my eyes, he had suddenly crossed the street, came into the tiny strip I was standing in, and stood only inches from me. In my coiled state, I was mildly surprised after turning this over that I didn't jump backward. Still, there he was, hunched over, face level with mine. The weight of his eyeless gaze had me locked in place, it seemed. I was so scared that I could feel a lump of vomit rising in my throat. I think I tried to move, but I'm not entirely sure. Then it happened. My eyes were drawn to a bit of motion near the lower right of my vision. A pale, thin hand drew up. His icy fingers grazed downward across my face. The feeling was one I could only describe as cold. Mind you, it's April in Tampa, Florida. What I felt was definitely his fingers, for it was too warm out to be anything else. I closed my eyes tight, expecting to wake up to the sight of the pearly gates. When I opened them, all I saw was the light across the street. Daisy trotted up behind me and gave me a small yelp, then jumped up on my legs as though hugging me. She did that whenever she was ready to go inside. It was over, just like that. My question now is, why? Why would he want to touch me? He had a perfect opportunity to take me, but he didn't. Why not? Does this touch mean anything? Please, I'm really scared and I have no clue what's going to happen to me. Or worse, those around me. Number 6. Every year since I was 2 years old, I have gone camping in the Poconos twice a year. I am 17 now, and this happened a few months ago. I brought my boyfriend, and it was his first time camping, so I, of course, wanted him to love it as much as I do. One day, my boyfriend, brothers, and I all headed down to the waterfall where most kids our age hang out. We all sat down in sort of a half circle and were talking and laughing and having a good time. Around dusk, my boyfriend and I decided to head back to the mess hall. Now, I have to say that the trip there was not exactly the shortest walk. On the way there, we had to walk through 2 giant fields and up like 6 hills. On paper, that sounds easy, but I promise you it's really not. Once we passed the hills and the fields, we came to a point where we had to choose between a dirt road that leads directly to the mess hall or a shortcut. The dirt road was much more scenic, and I was totally feeling it, so I led my boyfriend that way. Everything was great. We were holding hands and laughing. However, as we walked, a huge chill suddenly ran down my spine and stopped me dead in my tracks. I pulled my boyfriend the opposite way and told him I had a bad feeling about the dirt road. He didn't argue because it was a little creepy and dark. We turned back and started to take the shortcut. Now, when you go this way, there's still a hill that leads down into a field that goes right up to the mess hall. I began to trot down the hill without really looking when my boyfriend let go of my hand and stood completely still, staring into the field. Do you see that? He yelled. I turned around and saw something I had never seen before and hoped to never see again. There was a dark figure standing about 100 feet away in the field. The figure was extremely tall and extremely skinny, almost like a shadow. My first thought when I saw the thing was that it was a person trying to freak us out or play a prank. However, I soon realised that this was no joke. I called out in fear, "What is that?" And as the words left my mouth, the shadow figure leaned forward, much as a cat does when it's on the prowl, and then shifted to the left. It didn't walk or run, but just shifted. It was almost as if the figure had teleported. This near made me pee myself, and at this point I was not going to just stand there and get eaten, so I grabbed my boyfriend's hand and we booked it out of there. It was the fastest I've ever run before. We ran all the way back to the waterfall where my brothers were still ranting about video games. At first, we just sat there and didn't speak a word of what we had seen. I know I sat there and looked behind us to see if someone would come running down, laughing about pulling a great prank. But there was no one. Nobody came running because nobody had pulled a prank. Afterwards, my boyfriend told me not to tell anyone about the figure because he didn't want to be the laughing stock of the campground. However, I am a loudmouth and I told my brothers, and basically everyone else there, about our experience. I should have listened to my boyfriend because we did get laughed at, a lot. But I don't care because this story is true and it still haunts me to this day. Number 7. In 2003, when I was 13, I had a strange dream. I was running through a dense forest of briars and thorn trees. I don't really know why, but I just run and run. When I come across a blank patch with moonlight filtering through, I stop and look down. I'm holding a baby. It's a newborn baby girl. I look up and see a man with no face standing across from me, with his arms spread wide. He is an atypical Slenderman who's not in a suit. He is curly haired, wearing slacks and a sweater. He is barefoot. I am wearing a floor-length skirt and loose-fitting shirt, also barefoot. I hand him the baby. He extends his jaw from inside of his non-face. Where his mouth should be opens, like the stretching of putty or something sticky, into a cavernous mouth opening as I reach to hand him my baby. He extends a second long set of arms to better grasp the baby and puts her in his mouth. I turn and start running again. Eventually, I come back to the spot and see I have another baby. It's a boy. The man is there. He extends his hands, but I cradle the child and turn away. The patch melts away and I wake up. I had this dream for like 2 years after the first time, on and off. Number 8. Throughout my life, I have had 3 experiences with the entity that I have come to call the Shadow Man. He lurks in my nightmares and is always in the back of my mind when I am in the dark. My first experience was when I was 8. I've always been a poor sleeper, and this night was no different. Around 2 in the morning, I realised that I need to go to the bathroom. I slipped out of my bed and tiptoed to the washroom, hoping not to wake anyone as I passed by their doors. When I reached the bathroom, I was confronted by a tall figure shrouded by darkness. I was shocked, but I could not seem to utter a single noise. I just stood there. The figure was clearly that of a man, but no features were distinguishable. He reached out his hand with a long, slender finger. He began to beckon me towards him. I could not move. I tried to see if I could recognize his face. Maybe it was my father up for a late-night whiz. The figure said nothing. It only beckoned. After some time, I worked up the nerve to turn on the light. With the flip of a switch, the figure had gone. I remember fleeing to my parents' room, crying that I had seen a monster, only to be hushed and told that the dark was playing tricks on me. Maybe it was. 4 years later, we visit my great-uncle's farm. It was no longer a functional farm, but my brother and I used to like to go and play in the old hayloft and search for the skeletons of long-dead cats. A morbid hobby maybe, but it certainly seemed fun at the time. After a long day of playing in the hayloft, we were getting ready to leave. It was late afternoon and my parents were eager to get home for supper. As we were leaving, I looked back at the barn. In the highest window, at the top of the old building, I could make out the figure of a man. No discernible features, just this shadowy figure. I felt like he was looking directly at me. There was movement. He was beckoning. Fear slithered up my spine. I knew that for a person to be standing in front of that window, there would need to be a surface for them to stand on. I knew the ins and outs of that barn, and I knew there was no floor in front of that window. Whoever it was had to have been hovering there on thin air. I kept this to myself. I knew my parents would not believe me, and I was not sure I believed it myself. About 2 years ago, I had my most recent experience with the Shadow Man. As I had mentioned before, I am a poor sleeper. As I got older, I started to develop sleep paralysis. I would feel like my body was finally starting to drift off, then some overwhelming terror would come over me, and I would try to move or scream, but was unable to do either. I was conscious, but temporarily trapped in my own body. I would get these sensations from time to time. They would frighten me, but I knew it was just my silly brain toying with me. Until that night. It was late. I was lying in bed, hoping to drift off soon. I could feel the sleep begin to creep up my limbs. My breathing was becoming regular and restful. My eyes were getting heavy. The numbness of sleep was finally starting to envelop me. As my eyes began to flutter before retiring for the night, I see him, standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. I cannot see his eyes, but I know he is looking at me. I try to move, to shake myself into wakefulness, but the sleep paralysis has taken over. I am aware of my surroundings, but unable to do anything. He begins to crawl up my bed towards me. I can feel the pressure, but I cannot move. I try to scream. I try to escape, but I am frozen. His face is soon inches from mine. I stare into nothingness. The outline of a face is there, but no features. I cannot get away. My heart is racing. I feel sick to my stomach. I urge myself to get out of my paralytic state. I shoot up from my bed and he is gone. I look around my room. I must have been dreaming. That could not have been real. I settle myself back down. My tired mind must have been playing tricks on me. I lay down in my bed. I was okay. I felt the odd sensation that someone was in my room, but I chalked it up to that nightmarish experience. I started to feel sleep take over my body again. Just as my body is ready to submit to my overwhelming exhaustion, I hear it. The rocking chair in the corner of my room, rocking back and forth, back and forth. He's back. Number 9. Lately, I have been staying up until about 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, reading stories until my eyes can no longer hold themselves up. I've also been reading about Slenderman and learning more and more about him. Yes, I know, not a good idea. Anyway, after discovering what Slenderman was, I've been really paranoid. I feel like I'm always watched everywhere I go. Just 2 nights ago, around 2:45 a.m, I was lying down on the couch watching TV and texting my friend when I heard the gate to my backyard open. Note, we are having a remodel going on in the front part of our house, so we can't use the front door. We have to go through the side gate. After you enter through the side gate, you walk about 25 feet, and to your left is a patio and a pool. A sliding glass door leads from the living room to the patio. Next to the living room is the kitchen. Anyway, after the gate opened, I heard footsteps. It sounded like the person was dragging their feet. The blinds to the glass door were closed, and I was getting really paranoid. I told my friend that someone was in the front of my house, and he jokingly responded with, "It's Slenderman, he's going to get you." After reading that, I got even more scared. I turned the TV louder and I tried to ignore whatever was out there, hoping it was just a dog or something. About 2 minutes later, and I heard something heavy get thrown into the pool. After that, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to bed wanting to forget what had just happened. Now I'm home alone. It's 10:30 at night, and my mum won't be back until around 3 a.m. I'm hearing lots of noises and activity going on outside. I've also noticed earlier today that a few things were missing from our yard. The noises keep getting louder, and I'm really scared now. I'm sitting in my room tucked in a corner with my blinds closed and my door locked. I keep getting the feeling of something watching me, and I'm getting very scared. All the doors and windows are locked in my house, and all the blinds are closed. The noises from my side are still going on, and I'm not sure what to do. Number 10. My roommates and I often write or draw things on our bathroom mirror in dry erase marker. I went in to take a shower and wrote, "Slenderman is watching you." I stepped into the shower, and when I got out, I was slightly creeped out. Every word looked like it had veins coming out of it, and the word, "you," was completely warped, as if someone wrote it with a shaky hand. it was no longer my handwriting. At the time my roommate was home, but I know he didn't come in and write it because the door was locked. I left the house for work, and when I came back later that day, the words were changed again. The word watching was written in a really weird way, where you could barely read it. I asked my roommate and my boyfriend, and they both denied doing it. I know if they had done it, they would have made it clear that they were trying to scare me. I don't know how it happened, and to this day, that mirror now creeps me out. Number 11. The private kindergarten school that I had gone to as a child was shut down a few years ago. No one knows why. I decided to head back to see what was left as a little adventure. Me and my friend went to check it out at night. I'm afraid of the dark, so I refused to go in. Instead, we checked the back of the building, and we saw her, a little girl in all black with a blonde ponytail, just sitting there looking at the sky. We shrugged it off as just a kid that snuck out. It was 1 a.m. The next day, we went when it was still light. We broke in through a window, and when we entered I was shocked. Everything had been left. The couches in the teacher's room, the desks, the pianos, and even paperwork on the children and old checks. I went into the bathroom and I saw a huge bottle of open pills, and I'm still not sure what they are. There's pictures of babies with matches around them. When we went downstairs, there was a painting of Slenderman that covered the wall. The kitchen was still the same, and even some of the food was left over. There was a knife and handcuffs. Though it was kind of sketchy. We found pictures of the kids that went there and notes saying, "I don't want to leave, I'm so sorry. I need these children," and things like that. Number 12. Let me explain. It's like a disease. The more you see, the more you believe, and the more you fear it. The more you fear it, the more you get paranoid about seeing him. Then you make yourself believe you see him, because you think you will. Then you become even more scared, until it engulfs you. That is how Slenderman is real. He is real in the same way fear is real. A very scary, metaphysical being that takes your sanity. The stories were all true to an extent. Number 13. Years ago, before I had even heard of Slenderman or read it, there was a story of him around my old neighbourhood. We did not actually call him Slenderman, but some kids had reported seeing a tall, older man in a suit walking around the graveyard. There was a specific story that sticks out to me, told by a girl that was in college at the time. She was my friend's older sister, and she was telling me about how she was skateboarding home one night and she had to pass the cemetery, which was the block over from hers. She kept seeing tall, lingering shadows following her, but she thought nothing of it, till she got home and saw a tall, older man wearing a black suit standing in her backyard. She ran inside and looked out the window to see him standing across the street under the trees. She said he didn't leave all night, and that she would see him every now and again in the same spot. There were so many other stories almost identical to hers around my neighbourhood. I never actually saw anything, and I'm pretty glad that I didn't. I'd be worried that he was outside my window right now. But I live across the country from my old home. I wonder if there are still stories of him there.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or of any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time, guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.